So I would like to follow up on your last remark with a question about Trump's second term. Trump follows a long American tradition of denying scientifically evidenced environmental risks, a pattern that dates, as we have seen, back to the Reagan administration. Did his stance on climate change shift in any significant way between his first and his second term? Who are his key scientific advisors on these issues? And finally, is Trump still actively denying climate risks, or has he moved toward openly endorsing them? What does this evolution suggest about the very concept and heuristics of denialism?
It's hard to say whether Trump's views on climate have changed, in part because he often says different things on different days, although his views on climate change have been pretty consistent. I mean, he's pretty consistently been a denier, and he's been claiming that it was a hoax, for, I think, a decade or more. So I don't think we've seen any significant change in his views, but he's certainly become much more aggressive. And what we've seen in the few months that he's been in office is an aggressive determination to shrink or even destroy the scientific agencies that are crucial for this issue. So one of the agencies that has been a particular target of the administration from day one is NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So why, you might ask yourself, why NOAA? Well, NOAA is one of the key organizations that collects the data, particularly the satellite data, that prove that climate change is real, that prove that this is not a hoax, that prove that the oceans are warming and getting more acidic. And so if you take away the agency that does that work, then you don't even have to deny the science anymore, you just destroy it. And so there is something particularly aggressive and tragic, I would say, about, it's really moving into Orwellian territory. You're not just fighting with the scientists now, you're actually trying to eliminate them and treating science and scientists as an enemy to be eliminated. And we're seeing that in the current administration. Also, the attempt to essentially dismantle the regulatory function of the EPA. That's not a surprise to anyone who's been tracking this, but the aggression with which he's doing it is greater in the second term than it was in his first. Who are his key scientific advisors? Very hard to tell. As far as I can tell, he doesn't actually have scientific advisors because he doesn't believe in science. He has political advisors, he has economic advisors, he has people who are doing the dirty work of dismantling federal scientific agencies, obviously Elon Musk, but I don't think he's actually getting scientific advice because I don't think he wants scientific advice. I don't think he believes in scientific advice, but we'll see. That could change if we have another pandemic. And in terms of actively denying climate risks, yes. His policy is drill, baby, drill. He wants to increase fossil fuel production. He said that explicitly. So no one who takes climate risk seriously could possibly think that expanding fossil fuel production is the right thing to do at this moment in history. So I think that, this is denial on steroids. This is a sort of supercharged denial that we not only deny that it's real and important, but we actually aggressively pursue the very activities that are leading to, I try not to use the word catastrophe too often because that's a very strong word, but these are the exact policies that I think many scientists believe will lead to some of the worst case scenarios that would really truly cause massive social, economic, and political disruption.
When you published your key article about scientific consensus of human-made global warming in 2004, climate discussions were primarily focused on mitigation. However, with the Paris Agreement's 1.5 degree target effectively missed in 2024, the problem of adaptation to an ongoing catastrophe becomes urgent. How, then, is climate denial being reinvented in this very era of adaptation?
One thing I think we've seen throughout this story is how different arguments come and go at different times. So we can go back to the early 1980s and see people arguing, we don't have to worry, we'll just adapt. So the version of that today is, well, the climate is changing. We've missed the 1.5 limit. I don't like to call it a target because that implies it's something that you good to aim for. It's really a kind of threshold or limit that we should have stayed below and we've now failed to. So now the argument is we have no choice but to adapt. And of course, on some level that is true, and many good and principled people are now working on adaptation because it is a necessity. But it's also still being used as a kind of denial argument to say, we have no choice but to adapt, so therefore we can forget about carbon taxes, or therefore we can forget about a just transition to a green economy. And sometimes that argument is made in a way that implies that adaptation will be relatively painless. Oh, we'll just adapt. But what does it really mean in practice? In practice, it means people losing their homes. It means, multi-million-dollar homes in Pacific Palisades burning to the ground. It means floods in Asheville, North Carolina, destroying whole communities. It means across the globe, in China, in India, in Europe, huge amounts of damage, and the taxpayer, ordinary citizens, left to pick up the bill. And then it also means people becoming frustrated by their government, that government didn't protect us from these things, and turning to other alternatives, many of which are undemocratic. So, in 2014, Erik Conway and I published The Collapse of Western Civilization, which was meant to be a sort of cautionary tale about what the worst extreme case could look like, not that we actually thought that would happen. And what's really scary about the last 10 years is how much of what we wrote is actually already happening, and especially the undermining of faith in democratic institutions. Because a key part of our argument in that book was, if democratic governments fail to address this adequately, you will see people turning to authoritarian solutions, particularly because authoritarian countries will actually be more able to do some of the things that need to be done. Like if you have to have forced relocation of people, and it's not going to be pretty, it's not going to be nice, it's going to be dreadful, but that's not a crazy thought. And I think we are actually seeing some of that already now. People here in the United States turning to Trump because they think he's, authoritarian in a good way, authoritative, I guess I should say. Fine line between authoritarian and authoritative, right? We want our leaders to be authoritative. We may or may not want them to be authoritarian. And in Germany, Alternative for Deutschland, French, in France, the shocking success of the Le Pen dynasty, right? People saying and doing things that we wouldn't have thought even 10 years ago that you could say in civilized society, or Elon Musk claiming that Hitler didn't kill people. I mean, when did that even become possible? So we are seeing some really troubling political shifts that are obviously not caused only or even mainly by climate change. I don't mean to be making that claim. But I do think that the way in which liberal democracies are seemingly impotent to deal with big issues like climate change, I do think is part of the story of the appeal of authoritarianism for at least some people.